friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is showing you how I experimented with a piece of toned paper and coloured pencil. The paper is by Strathmore and it comes in a book, a ring bound book of paper, and it's Strathmore toned grey paper, 9 inches by 12 inches. The drawback is it's only 80 pounds in weight, so it's a very, very thin paper, but I just wanted to have a play, have an experiment with it, see what it could manage with when coloured pencil is applied. So we'll be looking at that today and the pros and cons. The pencils I'm using are the Derwent Drawing Pencils. They're amazingly soft. They're a wax-based pencil, so they're quite opaque. Well, in actual fact, the white is very opaque, as you'll see later on in the painting drawing. They go onto the paper really smoothly, build up the layers very quickly, but that is more because of the properties of the pencil, less of the properties of the paper. Now, this toned paper has got like a fleck in it. It's quite pretty to look at, and in the past I've just used it as a sketching paper, so I don't really think it's meant for mixed media or anything like that, and I will be adding some solvent to this in a bit, and you'll see that the paper does tend to bulge a little bit. It doesn't cockle as such because it's taped down, but it does bulge a bit, so I won't be using it in the future for any solvent based work that I'll do. Okay, so it's a Red Panda that I'm doing today. I did a quick sketch, just like I said, this is just an experiment piece for me, so it was quickly sketched out. I transferred the sketch over onto this piece of paper using my light box, and then just continued to start applying some coloured pencil. I keep going to say pastel pencil, just ignore me when I say that it's coloured pencil. These are wax based coloured pencils. So threw in a few colours there, some lilacs, light burgundy and a black, and there's a little bit of dark blue in there, and then I'm going on with some solvent, and I don't know if people watching this are going to already know these things, so I'm just going to go with the flow and let you know. It's odourless thinners, really. That's all, you know, this solvent is. It's an odourless brush cleaner. It's by Zest-It. You can use any odourless mineral spirits. In actual fact, you can use any thinners, but I don't know if I'd like the smell. All the ones that I've worked with that say odourless, they still do have an odour, unfortunately. And I'm saying unfortunately because it can give you a bit of a headache. But also it's a good thing because it reminds you if you've left the container open. So it's not for the faint-hearted, really. Give it a go if you want. If you don't, you can just build these pencils up in layer after layer after layer. What the solvent does, it actually dissolves the wax or the oil that's in the coloured pencil pigment that's binding the pigment together. It just helps it disperse into the paper. This is, like I said, it was just an experiment to see what this paper could do. I was just wanting to play the day I did this drawing. It held up okay. It held on to the paper held onto the pigment okay. The pencils worked beautifully. Not got a problem with those at all. The only drawback with the Derwent Drawing Pencils is it's a pack, a range of 24. That's all. Just wish they had more colours in the range. Some of the colours are quite muted. The pencils are fantastic though, so thumbs up to those. They're a great starter if you want to get started in coloured pencil. But yeah, using thinners like this is just really to move the pigment around on the page a little bit more, build up your layers a little bit quicker, make the layers a little bit denser. It looks really dark there. That's because you're actually wetting the paper. Once the paper's dry, it lightens back up again. So I waited for it to dry, added a little bit of a lighter colour on top, and now I'm going even lighter still. So these pencils, because they're so soft, because they're wax based, and the wax makes them more opaque, it does mean that you can build up your lighter layers onto your darker layers a little bit more easily than other coloured pencils that are more oil based, such as Caran. They're wax based but not as waxy as these, so they're not as opaque and as blendable as these. So they've all got the pros and the cons. You know, if you're going to buy coloured pencils, watch some reviews. There's loads of them online on YouTube, and then choose a pencil that you think is going to be right for you. And instead of going in straight off and buying a full set that can be quite expensive, try picking up just a couple, you know, 2 or 3, or just a handful of colours you think you might want to work with. Give them a try before going in and spending your well-earned money on a big set on something that you might not feel is right for you in the end. I'm quite fortunate. I get a lot of art materials given to me by manufacturers and companies, so I get to play with a few more things than probably I would if I'd got to buy them all myself. Okay, so the surface of the paper, really you can't feel any tooth on it. It does feel very, very smooth, but I was able to comfortably layer up quite a few layers on this paper, no problem at all. But as I said, I think that's more down to the pencils than it is the paper. So with coloured pencils, you can use watercolour paper, papers made for pastel pencils. Mine Taints is one, that's by Caran. You can use the Clairefontaine pastel mat, which has a cork-like texture. So with coloured pencils, you've got quite a lot of variety of different papers that you can actually try them on. And the best thing is, if you've got a friend that already works with coloured pencils, see what their preferences are and then work from there, and then you can start experimenting and trying different papers and surfaces to work on. So I added a little bit of burgundy, a very light burgundy, into that body. This is the body, it's between the front legs. It's in shade as it's dipping behind a log. I decided I didn't want those marks in there after all, so I went over them, no big deal. Working with coloured pencil, normally you have to know which colour goes where. You know, you have to have planned it out in your head before you start, because coloured pencils can be a little bit unforgiving. Working with a solvent and working with these extra soft coloured pencils gives you a little bit more of a leeway for covering mistakes. They're not really mistakes, they're just, you know, decisions that you wish you hadn't made. Okay, so I went over that with the solvent, and it's a little bit damp there, that's why it's looking so dark. But obviously, as I said, that's because the paper's wet underneath, so everything looks a lot darker. So you might think you've gone too dark on some things. Just wait for your paper to dry if that's the case, and you'll soon see that it dries a little bit lighter. So I had swatched these pencils out, but I'd swatched them out on white paper, so it only gave me a rough idea of what these colours were going to eventually look like once solvent was added. Obviously, going on to grey paper, I knew that the brighter colours weren't going to be as bright because of the underlying grey colour, and the lighter colours weren't going to be as light, so they were going to be less light and less bright working on a grey toned paper. Why work on a grey toned paper, you ask? Well, I'm assuming someone out there is asking. You can either work, you can get toned papers in greys, greens, beiges, creams, all different tones, but I just got this big pad of Strathmore toned paper anyway, so I thought I'd have a play with it. But the greys, it's your middleman. So when I work on a painting or a drawing that's in colour or in many tones of black and white, many tonal values, I like to get my mid-tones in first, then I can go back through to my darks and up through to my lights. So it's nice to work from a mid-range. Toned paper gives you that mid-range, and you then work either lighter or darker or both as the situation arises. So it's cutting out it's cutting out a step, I guess, is the easy way to think of it. Okay, so leaving the bottom area now, the foot was worked just exactly the same as the leg. Some pencil colours were applied. I kept to, I think, 3 or 4 different colours there. That included black. There was a lilac, a burgundy, a black and a blue. And I'm just keeping those colours just for the darker areas. Like I said, this was just a fun piece for me to do, a bit of an experimentation because of the paper. Don't think I'll be using it with a solvent in the future, as I said, but just, yeah, it was just a relaxing piece to do. So on with a yellow. This is like a yellow ochre, a little bit lighter than a brown ochre in this. If you can hear some weird breathing, it's my dog. Sky, don't snore, baby. She just started snoring, so I've just woken her up. Evil mummy. Sorry, Sky. Okay, so before I started with this yellow, I did take a putty rubber and I just gently lifted off some of the pencil from that area, so the lighter colours wouldn't be showing the graphite through them. Then on with this brown or terracotta, I think this one might have been called. As you've heard me talk about in past videos, the colour's not important, just get your contrast in there. And this section of the Red Panda's back, it was out of focus, so really, as long as all the strokes are running in roughly the right direction, how the hair would be standing up, but it was out of focus anyway, so I was just getting some colour in there, having a play, drinking coffee, listening to a podcast, or I might have been even listening to a YouTube channel, I can't remember now, but yeah, happy. And I've been finding, I don't know why, but I've been finding myself filming on my mobile phone more and more, and less with my Canon camcorder that seems to have taken it into its own head to start distorting colours for me, which is wonderful, and I don't know about it until it's finished filming. So most of this video today will be filmed from the side view like this. There is a little bit of an overhead shot filmed with my Canon camcorder, but I'm not happy the results of that. But unfortunately, I've had to keep that little bit of video in because I hadn't filmed it in any other position. So I'm hoping to get that sorted out. Either that, or I'll just set another phone up, iPhone above my workstation, and just film with that, and yeah, just edit from 2 different iPhones, I guess. Okay. So going in with the solvent again, the reason I was doing it, as I said, I was just putting the paper through its paces really. These drawing pencils, they apply so easily, they're so soft, they're a lovely textured pencil. You can't get a really fine point on them because of how soft they are. You get a fine point on them and within a couple of minutes they've actually lost their point because they're so soft. But because they're so soft makes them extremely blendable and opaque for a coloured pencil, so they really are a dream to work with. And I have worked with them before. As I said, I've got the tin. There's only 24 colours in the tin, and they would be a great starter for anybody wanting to try coloured pencils, because you don't need to use a solvent with them. I was just doing this just because I was playing about, but you can create wonderful paintings, drawings, whatever you want to call them, with this set of coloured pencils and not need anything else, because they're so blendable. You can mix your own colours on the paper. You know, you put a blue and a green together and they look wonderful. You put a red and a blue together and you get some beautiful purples. You know, your red and yellow can make some lovely oranges. So yeah, 24 colours. I wish there was more colours in this range, but the trouble is I'd want them then, and unless Derwent threw them at me, I don't think I'd go out and buy them, because I've got so many material already. Okay, so just did the side of the body and down through the other front leg the same as I did the other side and his back, and just left it at that. Went over with a bit of solvent and just left it at that. Into the eyes, as I said, it's just a play piece. It was just experimenting, seeing what I could do with this paper, because obviously I've got a whole pad of it, and I might be doing some pen and ink things on it next time. I'm not sure yet. So on with a little bit of colour. The eyes are really small, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to get a lot of detail into them, especially with these pencils, because they don't hold the point very well. There's a point on that one. I've taken the wood away from the pencil itself with a knife, with a Stanley blade, and I've sharpened the pigment on a piece of very fine sandpaper. But the points on these will crumble if you add too much pressure, and like too much pressure is just a bit, so they do crumble. So I knew straight away that wasn't going in for great amounts of detail in any area in particular. If you want to put a lot of detail into an area, then it's always easier if that area is slightly larger. So if I'd wanted to have done this, created this Red Panda with a lot of detail throughout, I wouldn't necessarily have used this paper. I would have used a paper that I was already familiar with, such as the Clairefontaine pastel mat or velour paper. And I would have done him slightly bigger, and then you could throw all the detail at him that you wanted, and that would have been a lot easier. So put in some darks around the eyes, dark down the side. I wanted to concentrate on that side of his face while I got this camera running, because I wanted to turn it upside down to do the other side, and it's not really very nice to watch if you're watching somebody work completely upside down. So I thought I'd work that side just while the camera was focused on it. And when I say camera, I mean iPhone, because of my silly camcorder issues. Okay, so going on with a lighter one, and that is the lovely bit about these pencils, is you really can work your lights over your darks. Wonderful, wonderful pencils. As I said, I've used them before, but not on this paper. And yeah, it's all pros with this pencil really, and no cons. I mean, they won't retain a sharp point, but that's the nature of them. It's not a defect in the paper, in the pencil. It is just the fact that they're so soft. They're buttery soft, wonderful pencils. Going round the face area, under the eye, and keeping my eye on my reference image. And my reference image is on screen. So I don't print any reference images off, just because I don't need to. Can't see the point in wasting paper and wasting ink, and it's not very environmentally friendly. So I take my own photographs generally. Then I save my photographs from my camera to my PC, transfer what I want to use as reference images over onto my iPad, and then just work from a screen. It's so nice. Sketch from that screen, paint from that screen. If you want to enlarge a piece of your reference image, you've not got to print off another, photograph enlarged. You just, expand your screen, and there you have it in front of you. Much easier. And obviously you can alter contrast and saturation, colour saturation and things like that on screen as well, or even turn your image to black and white if you want to just draw from it. So things like that, much better to work from a screen than wasting paper and ink, printing reference images off. I don't know about you, but all the printers I've had haven't been that great with colour correction anyway. Okay, so I've added some white, and I've just gone straight on to the grey paper with the white pencil, and it's worked fabulously, as you can see there. Now, as I said, I couldn't get detail into these eyes with the pencils because they weren't retaining the points very, very well, and the area is very small. So I popped some colour in, got a little bit of solvent on a very fine brush, and it's just a generic brush. I don't think it's even got a name on it, this little brush. And and just blended that area out with a little bit of solvent. So there's only so much detail you can get in such a small area. And that's not what I was aiming for on this piece anyway. It will look like a Red Panda, but I wasn't aiming for complete reality, I guess. So he is quite stylised. Little bear. Even though he's not a bear, he's a Red Panda. And they're not bears. Weird. Okay, in with some darks into the middle of the ear now. Not a lot to say about this, it's just getting those base coats in. Remembering that you've got your grey paper as your medium value. If I was doing this Red Panda from scratch on white paper, my medium value probably would be darker than this paper. So there is that as well. You know, if you're thinking you're cutting out a step completely, it might not be an exact step you're cutting out. You know, you might want your mid grey lighter than this, or you might want your mid grey darker than this, depending on your subject. So there's that to consider as well if you're going to work with tone paper. So as you can see, the white is lovely, it's going straight onto the paper. You could build up lots of layers, but as I said, that's more to do with the pencil and not the tooth of the paper, because there's very little tooth on this paper. Enough to get a decent application of pencil, but I think it is more the pencil. Okay, so this is my Canon camcorder footage, and oh, it's weird. It's just, yeah, I've had to colour correct it quite a bit. Yeah, I won't mention any more. I'm just lacking words. So I just there was a lot of footage, and I've just had to trim it down to the bare minimum because I didn't want anyone to suffer through the. It kept coming up with greens in it, and I don't know. I'm gonna have a look at it, and maybe I should read the manual. But yeah, the face of the panda is just built up exactly the same as the body. Get your base coats in. Get your coloured areas in, whether they're the yellows, that yellow undertone. It looks green on my screen. I don't know if it's looking green on your screen or not. But it was a yellow base coat going over the grey paper. Then I went on with this. It's like an orangey brown colour. I think it might have been the burnt orange. I'm not sure now. All I was doing now is putting some guidelines in for myself. I knew I'd got quite a bit of layering to do. I'd been and got myself another cup of coffee at this point, so I knew that I was settled in now to get this face and get the whole head finished. So I wanted some guidelines, because once your guidelines are on and you know exactly which direction the fur is going, the length of the fur, once you've got all that mapped out, it's much more relaxing then to just, go through the technique, through the process. The hard bit's done, as you know, if you draw already, getting the sketch, getting your proportions right and things like that right at the very beginning, getting the composition, that can be the bit where, you might find a struggle. But once all that's done, and once the guidelines are in, then it's just down to the techniques that you've already learnt or you've been practicing, and just to enjoy the process then. So all the face, the forehead and down around the cheeks, all that was covered in the same way, yellow base coat over the grey paper, guidelines popped on, darks in, some oranges mixed in with those darks, because you never want to go in with black on its own, because it can look very flat. So if you want your painting to look warm, get some warm undertones underneath the black before the black goes on, and you'll find you need very little black anyway. I was being lazy, so I went on with a little bit more solvent. Didn't want to sit for too long, putting loads of layers on. As I said, these pencils are more than capable of doing this job without the solvent. They're very blendable. So yeah, And I'm a day late, aren't I, uploading this video. I went for my COVID jab on Friday, and wow, yeah, the AstraZeneca, and it just completely knocked me out. So I sort of lost the weekend, so I'm running behind a little bit this week, but yeah, I'll get there. So yeah, in with the solvent, blend everything together. It does look a lot darker, but don't forget when your solvent dries and your paper underneath has dried out, the colours look lighter again. Obviously they'll look a little darker than what they look like dry, but they won't look as dark as what they look like when they're wet. Just showing you, so the whole face, and this is a footage that was lost with my silly camcorder, I literally put dark layers in, built up to lights, and as you can see, the light colours, look at that, they go over the dark colours so easily. Obviously when you're working a lighter pigment over a darker pigment, it will pick up some of that darker pigment, so make sure to keep wiping your pencil off, or your brush off if you're working with a wet medium. Wipe it off on a clean cloth, else you'll just be transferring the dark pigment to other areas where you might not want them. So lots of little strokes, working light over dark. And this is something, a project like this, it's something, you know, you could fiddle about with for hours, you know, but you got to call it done at some point. As Da Vinci said, painting's never finished, merely abandoned. I love that, because you know yourself, if you paint or draw, you can pick up paintings and end up overworking them, when in actual fact at some point you've got to move on and start your next project. You know, you've only got one life, and you're only going to get so many, oh, this is going to sound depressing. You've only got one life. You can only get so many paintings done in, you know, a day or a week or a month, so you don't want to be stuck on one painting forever. Do you know what I mean? You know, and if you're struggling with a painting, it's really tempting sometimes to throw it away, because I know I've done it, you know, to sort of get rid of them because you're completely fed up with something. But sometimes you just need a break. So as long as you don't put it away and never go back to it, because then you've not learnt anything. But if you want to put it away for a week or a fortnight while you do something else, something that, you know, a short project, you know, you're going to get finished, and then have a look at that other thing that you didn't finish with a pair of fresh eyes, and try again. Because 9 times out of 10, if a painting doesn't look right, it's because it's not complete. And obviously if you're seeing something wrong, that's a good thing, you know, that is a good thing, because we should all be self-critical of our works. If we're not self-critical, then we're never going to get any better. If everything I did, I thought, wow, that's amazing, not that I ever do, but if ever I was to think, wow, that's amazing, that's the best painting I've ever done, then I'd probably think, you know, what's the point in carrying on, because I've learnt it all, when actual fact art is never that. Art is always trying to achieve the next step, trying to excel in another area of your artwork. You know, it's just, I think it's an incredible journey, I really do, and I feel so blessed that I'm able to not only travel this journey myself, but share it with other people as well. And encourage other people on their journeys, because we're all on this never-ending learning curve, and it's just phenomenally exciting. Well, it is to me anyway, and I hope it is to you too. If there's any subjects or any mediums that you'd like me to cover, then please leave a comment in the comments below. I'm pointing, you can't see me, but I'm pointing down because that's where the comments will be. I do go through all the comments, and I do reply to everybody. So yeah, if you're enjoying my YouTube channel, then please subscribe if you haven't already. And to my lovely, fabulous, wonderfully fabulous subscribers, thank you so much. Your encouragement on social media, and just the fact that you're subscribing is amazing. It's wonderful. Thank you very much. So please hit like if you're liking this video. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't already. That's great, thank you. And share. Yeah, if you want to share my videos with your friends, you know, only if they're interested. I don't want you to be spamming anybody. So yeah, please feel free to share with family and friends. I'm hoping that by next year I'll be teaching in, you know, person again, because I didn't teach at all last year, and I haven't taught at all this year either, you know, because of the whole COVID thing. But hey ho. So hopefully next year. Oh, who knows, by the end of this year I might be teaching in person again. But I'm going to carry on with the YouTube channel. This is a definite now. Okay, onto the nose. So the tongue was worked up with just the burgundy and the pink. There's only one burgundy, one pink and a lilac in the pack, I believe, of 24. This is a turquoise blue. This is quite a dark colour. I noticed when I added this to the fur and then added a little bit of solvent, a little goes a long way with this colour. So that's why it's always best if you can swatch colours out. If you think you're going to be working coloured pencil with a solvent, then it's best to do 2 swatches, 1 swatch dry and 1 swatch with solvent, just so you know the difference in colour and the difference in darkness, and, you know, yeah, just give that a go, and the opacity, how that's going to change as well if your pigment is wet or dry. Excuse me, losing my voice. Hooray shouts, everybody. Okay, on with a little bit of solvent. Didn't have to do that, you know, could have blended them out, carried on blending with the pencils, but yeah, must have been in a lazy mood that day. It was, I mean, I've got plenty of coffee to keep me occupied, so it wasn't a lack of coffee I was rushing or anything. Yeah, never rush your work. That's another thing. Yeah, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well, and anything that's worth doing well is worth taking your time over. So yeah, try not to rush your work, because it will show. Excuse me, just going to take a drink. Another nice thing with these pencils is if I did make a mistake, say I did the shadow on the tongue too dark, I could actually just go back in with the white and very, very lightly blend it away, because the white is so opaque. It was wonderful. Really, really wonderful pencil to work with. And if you're working with other coloured pencils, so a different brand, say Lyra or Caran Dash, or another Derwent sort of pencil, then it's worth getting one of these Derwent Drawing Chinese Whites. That's what I'm using right there. It's worth getting one of those into your coloured pencil stash, because it is so opaque. As you can see, it's even covering the darkest of the darks on this piece. The forehead, and that we've not got the footage for, I just really built that up like I did the rest of the body. Lots of dark underlayers over my guidelines that you saw me put on, right the way up until I was sort of just past mid-tone on the browns and oranges, and then I went in with a yellow. There's a yellow ochre in this pencil set. Went in with the yellow ochre, and wow, that really made it pop. The yellow ochre really stands out against the dark browns and oranges, because they're so opaque. Well, I've got nothing bad to say about anything today. It's wonderful. And I can't blame the paper. The paper was a bit of a pain. It kept bulging where I'd put this solvent on. And obviously, yeah, never dry your paper with a hairdryer if it's got solvent on, because do believe that's flammable. So yeah, so just let it dry on its own, flat. This is taped to a board with some acid-free masking tape. Yeah, don't want fire engines down your road, do you, because you've been trying to dry a painting that's got solvent on it with a hairdryer. It is tempting, I know, when things take such a long while to dry, but yeah, just don't do it. Resist it. Go and grab another coffee or take the dog for a walk. So more white, yeah, just building up. obviously when you're building up layers like this, do leave some of the underneath bits showing, else there's no point in having a toned paper. If I was to cover all of this area, for instance, with white, then there would be no point in working on a grey toned paper if I'm not going to let any of that grey shine through between the markings that I'm putting on now. So keep that in mind too. If it's just for a background look, so this is another thing that crossed my mind, if it was just a grey background I was after, then there'd be, yeah, it would have been easier, to be quite honest, to have worked on a different piece of paper and just put a grey background in. Either painted a background in and then applied the coloured pencil on top. You can work coloured pencil over watercolour, you can work coloured pencil over acrylic, coloured pencil over pastel. So there's lots of different ways that if it was just a grey background I wanted, or you want, then you can use, you know, lots of different mediums to get a grey background on and then pop your coloured pencil on top. So, and also you could have built up the majority of your subject with those different mediums as well, if that's your preferred way, or, you know, a way you'd like to give a try. So you could build up all your base coats with a different medium, watercolour, acrylic or pastel, pan pastels, anything like that, and then leave your fine detailing to coloured pencil, and then you'll have a mixed media painting. So obviously if you're entering competitions and things like that, you couldn't class that piece as coloured pencil, a coloured pencil piece. Obviously I don't enter competitions and things, but for this wouldn't be seen as a true representation of coloured pencil either, because I've used solvent in it, and some people don't like to think of you using solvent with coloured pencils. Hey ho, I don't mind, whatever gets the job done. And it is, yeah, these are light fast. They've got a very good light fast rating, these pencils, and using solvent with them doesn't affect that at all. So if in doubt, just check with the manufacturer of your art materials, and you can always ask them if using solvents and such like would affect their light fastness ratings. And if it's a quality company, they'll let you know. And that's it. So yeah, the whiskers were fine to put on, no problems at all. Popped everything on with the white pastel pencil, kept it nice and sharp with sandpaper, kept cleaning it to stop it from picking up and transferring dark pigment. Then it was where to sign, so scribbled my name onto a piece of paper, moved the piece of paper about on the painting until I found an area that I think suited my signature best. Once I got that in mind, I used a Caran Dash. This is a Caran Dash Luminance coloured pencil, wax based but not as waxy as the Derwent Drawing, and then just pop my name in. I've used my name like this for many years, so it's my maiden name. And there you have him, a little Red Panda, Derwent Drawing coloured pencils on Strathmore toned grey paper, £80 in weight. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Join me over on social media too. I'm on Facebook. I've got my personal page and a business page. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, MeWe, LinkedIn. Also have a website, www.kerrynewell.com. See you soon. Take care, everybody.